You know what that music means. It's Primary Tuesday, and today one of the most fascinating races is in New Hampshire. In that state's first district, the ultimate swing seat for the House of Representatives, because it's flipped between a Democrat and Republican over the past 4 election cycles. Democratic Congresswoman Carol Shea Porter currently holds that seat, but her decision not to go for re-election has fresh faces running in both parties' primaries today. This is the same district President Trump won in 2016, underscoring its bellwether status. And Democrats need to hold that seat, of course, flipping at least 23 from red to blue to take back control of the House. But what could ultimately decide these toss-up races might not be what you think. MSNBC's Jacob Soboroff hit the road and spoke with voters in northern Maine to find out what matters to them.
This is the northeastern edge of the United States, and this right here is Canada. You can actually see the border clear-cut all the way through on the mountain right there. That's part of the largest, longest stretch of unguarded border in the world. And this is the very beginning of Maine's 2nd Congressional District, which is what we came to check out. We wondered what people do for a living along this border without walls. So we headed to the town of Mars Hill. You guys produce millions of potatoes a year out of your operation here.
Millions and millions, yes.
Millions and millions. Nick McCrum's family business produces potatoes for chips like Lay's here in the county that produces more potatoes than any other in the U.S. Can I pull one out of the ground?
Yes.
Oh, come on. Oh, I'm bad at this. Is Idaho a dirty word around here?
A little bit, yeah.
What are the issues around here that people care about? Is this it?
That's part of it. It's a big part of it for us, obviously. Paychecks and their jobs.
Nick mentioned that paychecks and jobs have been drying up for another local industry. So we headed to the town of Millinocket, which was hit hard when Maine's paper mills started closing because of foreign competition. We drove here to this place, which is the Great Northern Paper Mill, or at least it used to be. And when we were checking it out, we were just looking down here, and this is Mike, who's out here fishing, I guess, right, Mike?
Yeah, doing a little smallmouth fishing.
How many people do you think lost their jobs when this place closed?
Oh, it's in the thousands.
In the thousands?
Yeah.
These guys let us in, and we got to see a 700-foot-long building that used to house giant paper rolling machines. These jobs are gone now. I mean, what matters to people here?
Jobs. People would love to come back here and live here, but they got to be able to support themselves.
To find where residents of the district are going for jobs, we went to Bangor, the biggest city, with boutique coffee shops and upscale restaurants. You have a Maine tattoo? This is Maine. This is the state of Maine. So what do you do here?
I'm a host.
What's going to get you out to vote?
Raising minimum wage.
Raising minimum wage. There was one other major industry we hadn't checked out, so we drove southeast, past another closed paper mill, to the lobstering capital of Maine, Stonington. On the public dock, workers were waiting for the lobster boats to bring in the day's catch. So you used to work in a paper mill?
I did. You spend your whole life keeping something going, then they pull it out from under you. Doesn't make you feel very good.
How long were you working in the paper mill?
40 years.
You normally vote or no?
No, not normally.
Why not?
I really don't think that our opinions matter.
Do you care about it?
Oh, of course. It affects my livelihood. Why wouldn't I? I'd be foolish not to care.
Do you guys think that people in Washington kind of understand what life's like out here?
Oh, no, you kidding me? Now.
How you guys doing? You're on TV today. Can I come down there with you?
Sure.
This is my first time on a lobster boat. You guys are brother-sister team?
Yep.
How long you guys been doing this?
Our whole life.
And it's just a family business?
That's right.
Right.
Is there one party or candidate, like for Congress, for instance, that for you makes a difference or no? No. Day-to-day out here, what do people care about? What are people concerned about?
I know they try and change the laws a lot. How many traps we fish, or like when we fish.
It's funny, when you say, talking about changing laws, I thought you were going to say the laws that people talk about changing in Washington, like gay marriage, medical marijuana, all that stuff. But you're talking about when you can haul traps.
Absolutely, yeah. That's when politics and, that kind of affects us.
Politics and lobster fishing collide.
Yeah.
You guys know who Paul Manafort is?
I don't.
You don't. How about Robert Mueller?
Oh.
That makes sense. You guys got other things you're thinking about.
Yes.
Yep.
Wow. MSNBC's Jacob Soboroff joins me now, along with NBC correspondent Vaughn Hillyard, who has also been traveling the country talking with voters, MSNBC political contributor and TheRoot.com politics editor Jason Johnson, and Real Clear Politics associate editor and columnist A.B. Stoddard. There's so many great things in that piece, but at the end and I just came back from driving, 1,300 miles around Montana.
Yeah.
Here's what I hear over and over and over again. You don't understand what's important to us. They don't want to hear about Russia. They don't know who Paul Manafort is. It's really very simple when you go into the heartland and talk to real people who are trying to support themselves and their children.
And the inverse of that, of course, is our politicians in Washington don't know what's important to the people in these districts. And the president's actually been out there over the last couple of days doing this back and forth with President Obama, talking about how strong the economy is and who should get credit for the economy. I'll tell you what. In this district, and I was down in Florida the week before that, nobody wants to give anybody credit for a good economy. People are all still looking for good jobs. So to hear the president think that talking about how strong the economy is going to help him win these midterm districts is foolish.
Well, let's talk about one of those districts. You talk to people in the district, the only House seat in New England that's represented by a Republican?
That's right. That's right. So this district is represented by Bruce Poliquin. He's being challenged by Jared Golden, who's a young U.S. Marine veteran, I believe, who is trying to come in here and appeal to some of these younger voters. At the end of the day, we've all been talking about this over and over ad nauseum, frankly. It's turnout. And if these Democrats can get young people who haven't gone out to vote before to show up, come to the polls, and push back against some of the messages of this current administration, then they have a chance. If not, you know, look, you hear these people, the gentleman on the dock, the lobster fisherman, just like, nah, you know, they don't believe, I don't believe that they listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah, and you have gone, Vaughn, I mean, I don't know how many farms and county fairs and
pretty crazy.
Quite a few states. I'm sure that you're hearing a lot of the same things that we heard about in Maine, because people just do feel this disconnect that Washington doesn't get them.
They came out in those strong numbers in November of 2016 for a reason, and that was rooted in that confidence in this president, this man, to go and get, and when we're talking to farmers, those better trade deals. And that moment is now. Next week up in North Dakota, I just talked with a farmer yesterday, they're beginning to harvest those soybeans. And that is when this moment, in this time, in this trade war is going to become real, and whether they're going to see that impact. A lot of those individuals that we've talked to, though, people have said over the summer, like, you know, why are they sticking with the president? They're losing money. They're not even going to make a profit this year. Well, they tell us they are willing to sacrifice that short-term loss this year for the long-term game of the country. This president has done an effective job of convincing people about the patriotism of this election, to stick with Republicans, stick with him, because this moment may be hurting them now, but for the long-term good of this country, they can be a part of that.
So I want to ask both of you really quickly, do you sense that this enthusiasm that we keep hearing about on both sides is real? Do you talk to people who don't usually vote in midterms who say they're going to vote? Do you talk to people who have registered for the first time?
I think that's the question I think Jacob was getting to, was whether those Republican voters that voted for Donald Trump in 2016 are going to still come out. Because, by and large, I think those that are going to come out are going to stick with Steve Sivers out in Circleville, Ohio, are going to go and stick with their local congressman, Republican. They're separating the president from them. The question is whether they show up.
It's the young woman in the bar in Bangor who has the Maine tattoo on her back. I did not get one, just for the record, while I was there. Is she going to show up? Is she going to go out for the first time? She's 19 years old. Is she going to choose, because she wants a higher minimum wage, to go out and actually cast the ballot? And it's just a big TBD. I don't know. You know, that's it. I don't even think she knows at this point, Chris. And that's probably what's got everybody biting their nails.
Yeah, and the economy, at least you'll say one thing for this administration. They seem to get that the economy is really important, even though they're factually challenged on it, and that's been easily shown, AB. Not so good are the polls, right? One new poll shows the president's approval rating down 6 points in the last month. But here's what I think is really telling. Among independents, it's dropped an astonishing 16% to 31%. 32% think the president is honest and trustworthy. 32% are proud to have him as president. 36% agree that Trump cares about people like you. So I'm trying to figure out in my own mind, as somebody who has also traveled a lot in this country and hear all the time about the economy, is that indeed what's going to drive this? Or is there at least somewhere in these poll numbers that people want to send a message to President Trump?
Well, the problem is twofold. One, that people who turned out for Trump and feel very passionately about President Trump, no matter what he does, even if tariffs are affecting their livelihood and that of their communities and their families, those people don't necessarily believe that congressional Republicans get the job done. So that'll be an interesting test. He's not on the ballot. The second point is the economy doesn't always drive things in the midterms. Now, it might help Republicans stave off the traditional amount of losses that they can anticipate, especially with the president as unpopular as President Trump. But what's showing up in these polls is that a majority is not made just by your Republican voters. It's made with some independents. Independents are really souring on this president in rapid numbers. And that is going to be, they're skeptical of party, and they don't line up with a tribe. They don't have a team that they care that wins. And so they're taking it issue by issue. And if they feel really great about the economy and they turn out to vote, that could help. They're also voting on what's going on with the smashing of norms, the rule of law, the lies, all of the things that we think turn these numbers in the last 2 months.
Yeah, I guess, the big question becomes, Jacob, Jason, what does this make a difference? Does this factor in the whole idea that independents have, many of them that I talked to said this is not the president that they voted for. They wish he'd stop tweeting. They wish he would stop using the language he's using. But that Trump base is not going anywhere.
Well, the Trump base is never going to leave him. That's always been the case. He's a symbolic president for them.
And these are people who you can count on often to get out and vote. That's the issue for the Democrats, right?
They're always going to vote one way or another. I think what's been happening with independents is this idea, and I've said this before, the economy is almost working against the president. See, when the economy is good or people are comfortable, then they start voting on values, right? If I don't have a job, I'm like, who's going to get me a job? But if I feel safe in my job, I'm like, you know what? I don't like the fact that he's a liar. I don't like the fact that he may be messing around with prostitutes. So that the economy is actually almost harming the president, and that's one of the issues that's coming into play. But I also think we can't overlook the local races. The Democrats, one thing they have figured out this year, which they usually completely screw up, you see it in Paul Ryan's district, you see it in Georgia, you see it in Florida, they decided to run everywhere. They put good candidates all over the place and just roll the die that maybe the Republicans would screw up. So you've got governor's races now that are competitive that would never have been competitive 4 years ago. You've got a lot of state houses that are going to flip. And that ends up affecting voter suppression in 2016 and beyond.
Look, that was one of the failures, and Obama says this very clearly. That was one of his great failures. And I mean, all around the country, state legislatures were lost, governorships were lost. That's a fascinating point, though, isn't it? And I'm curious about what you feel when you're out there. Let's talk about Maine. If you talk to people where the economy is good, then can they move on to some of these other issues? Is it ultimately, even for this midterm, the economy that's at the heart of it?
It is at the heart of it. You go to a place like Bangor where there are jobs and there is a big population center. People there do start to want to talk about the issues sort of on the periphery, I guess you could say. The issues that we talk about sort of front and center every day, but for them are sort of out on the outer edges. But even then, it doesn't always break down like you think it would. The gentleman on the dock, the lobster fisherman, who traditionally would have voted Republican, I believe he told me, is also a believer in climate change. And so it depends on where you go, who you talk to actually figure out what the issues are and how to triangulate them about what matters to them. It just certainly is not one size fits all. I always expect the unexpected when I'm out there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I didn't think about, even though I had just driven literally from the south all the way to the north of Montana and had virtually no cell service at all, which was alternately terrifying and incredibly wonderful. Well, I usually don't. But when I went to talk to the sitting senator, John Tester, who's in a really tough race, he said, all these other things that people talk about, rural America is something unto itself that a lot of folks don't understand. We're talking in Congress about 5G. In rural places all around the country, we're talking about any G. Yep. We're talking about getting any kind of service. Back to all politics is local.
Or go look at Arizona. They've got a governor's race out there. Doug Ducey, this Republican governor. Education is the issue. The Democrats have put up David Garcia, a Latino educator, up there. That's something.
A lot of teachers running this year.
A lot of teachers running this year because it's going to come down to education in Arizona, not what's happening out here.
So what do we see happening here? Do you get a sense, either of you, is it the House flips and not the Senate? Could both of them go? Let me get your...
Well, if you look at the indicators, the variables that people are comparing now from 2010 and 2014 to now, or 94, wave elections. The variables are just as dangerous, if not more, for Republicans. And Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, has made it clear the Senate is not safe in a wave. They could lose Arizona, Tennessee, and
does he mean is he just
potentially
trying
Texas.
is he just trying to raise money here?
Well, it's a mixture of both, right? You want to raise money because you don't want to be Hillary Clinton. You don't want to say we've got this, right? And then you end up getting caught flat-footed. So the Democrats.
Can I tell you how many Democrats out there still talk about that?
It's totally true.
Yeah.
You know, so I think what's worked is that the Republicans are like, hey, we need to take this seriously, and the Democrats are pushing as well. I see this at sort of three levels, right? As a political scientist, there's level one where the Democrats retake the House. I think the numbers indicate that's very likely. But do they retake it at 25 or do they retake it at 30? If they start retaking the House at 30 or 40 seats, that means that probably Michigan and Pennsylvania, all those governors' races up in the Midwest probably flip to Democrat. If it's a huge wave and it's, say, 60 seats in the House, that means Georgia, that means Florida, that means some of these statewide races start flipping to Democrats as well. So we've got levels of waves that we could be facing this fall, and someone's going to have to do with turnout, someone's going to have to do with voter suppression, and someone's going to have to do if anybody screws up at a local level and messes up a race that's been handed to them.
And let's not even talk about the fact, because we've got to get through this election first, what it would mean for Democrats if a lot of those governorships flip and they have infrastructure in place.
Yes.
What a great conversation. Thanks to all of you. When are you guys going back out on the road?
Right, like now. I gotta go.
13 seconds from now. Okay. Well, coming up.
Thanks for watching. To see more videos, click right here, and subscribe.